Hello and welcome back to another Academy video with a good friend from Academy Arena United. It's been a little bit. It's been an interesting time for United in the last few weeks. We've had some debuts, we've had some minutes, we've had some injuries, we've had all sorts of things happening, and so a lot of that ties into the academy. Even things like missing out on Giovanni Kenda as a transfer has a knock-on effect on things worth discussing at the academy level. So a good time during this break to just catch up where we are today, what we're looking at moving forward. So how you doing? Good to have you back.
Yeah, good. Doing well. The last time we spoke was before the FA Youth Cup win against Arsenal.
Yeah.
And that was a great day out. Went with my friends. Yeah, it was fantastic. I actually got the score right. If anyone
Yeah.
remembers or notices, I did get it slightly wrong, though, didn't I? I said that we'd go 3-1 up and concede to make it 3-2. So it was slightly different. Um, and oddly enough, we predicted that Cheetah would play, but he didn't.
You
And that
still
was
managed to
interesting.
pull it off, huh?
Yeah. So just that's quite going to be quite interesting going forward with the under-18s playing Aston Villa in the semi-finals. Is Cheetah
Yep.
going to be brought back down? And maybe we can talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, appreciate
Hope
it.
everyone's
And
doing well that's watching as well.
for sure, for sure. And it was an interesting one. Obviously, it's good progress from the for the under 18s to get another win. And you have to think that they'll be, I think, just from a youth level, I believe they'd be favorites again against Aston Villa as well. With City on the other side of the bracket, it's pretty
Mm.
well all squared up for what it seems like the most likely outcome. We don't want to count anything before it's in to be a City versus United final for the FA Youth Cup. Could well
And
be, couldn't it?
I believe that game will be at Old Trafford
Yeah,
if
that's
if
wow.
if both teams go through. So that would be a crazy final.
That would be.
And a chance for redemption because they beat us, what was it, 4-0, I think it was in the league most recently. And United had a pretty strong team out that day. The bench was weak. The bench was very, very weak that day. And I think that did play a part. And I think we got unlucky. I think we spoke about it maybe on the video, but
Yep.
a chance for redemption, and that would be fantastic. And you're right, we would go into the Aston Villa game as favourites, I think, with or without Cheeto, for
Yep.
certain. I really do want him to play, though. I haven't said this publicly, but for me, it's a bit of a hot take. I think unless you're like a Yamal level of talent at 17, I don't think you should be pulled out of youth tournaments that are
Mm,
formative for young players because I think we we forget that Cheeto's just turned 17. He's only just turned 17, and I think it's fantastic that he's getting the experiences with the first team, and I've been campaigning for him wanting to, but I still think if he's given the opportunity, he should go back down because like I said, he's only 17, and I think players have to play out their youth careers and enjoy it. I've been listening to a new podcast that's come out recently. I think James Garner and Brown and Williams
yep.
have both done interviews recently, and they've spoken so much about how the academy days were some of the best experiences that they've ever had, and they're incredibly formative. These sort of big games, and so it's probably an unpopular opinion because people want to see Cheeto in the first team, and I understand that. But I just think let's give ourselves the best chance, and let's
Yep.
and he's on I believe he's on 7 goals. He's doing excellent in the competition, even after missing the game against Arsenal. And he's got a chance, even after missing games, to become the top scorer of the competition. So, yeah, I'd like to see it, but we'll have to wait and see. So the game's on the 31st of March, so it's coming up quite soon. Hopefully, we'll have maybe a couple of players back from injury. We'll have to see, but the squad is looking a lot healthier now than it was about a month ago when we were starting to
Yeah.
drop points. I don't know if you saw, but we were sort of drawing games and not really getting
Yes.
through them
Yeah.
and started to tail off a little bit.
Yep.
We've started to see players come back now. Players like Mantato, Jack Fletcher, just key players that really have a big difference on the team. So, and hopefully someone like Lacey comes back again. He picked up another injury, which is really, really shameful, a shame for him. But maybe he can come off the bench and things like that. But yeah, it's been a good time for the academy recently, particularly with talking about the first team as well.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously one of the downsides there with Cheeto, like things definitely got accelerated because of the injuries in the first team. He really wasn't planned to get in that quickly into the first team and play. And I think, obviously they had a game at that weekend and barely could come up with a bench in recent games. Now, after the break, the first team expects to have almost like 5 players returning. I think maybe
Mhm.
more. Potentially, Aiden Heaven's injury looks to be very, very minor, which is good for everybody, but it also means that he'll be okay soon. But there was like Lenny Yoro, Maguire, Nugarte, and Dorgu had a red card, and Kabi Mainu should be back, potentially by India very soon. So you've got like 6 players returning who are very likely to be on the bench for Ruben Amorim at the moment. Not saying he won't continue to cycle in some youth here and there, but I think it makes it less like we have to have Cheeto on
Yeah,
the bench,
yeah,
and more like he could go with the under 18s for that game. And as we saw with Harry Amass, he's played now for the first team. He got his debut, but he was in the FA Youth Cup too. So it's not like they can't be in both of
no,
those things.
yeah,
Um, they could do that. And so that was really good to see on Almas on that point. But hopefully then for the next round, the first team isn't in such dire straits that it can't let Cheeto at least go for that one, even if he's not playing at the regular under 18s
yeah.
level.
And it's not me. I'm not trying to sit here and say that anyone suggesting that he shouldn't play is wrong and I'm
Yeah.
right. I'm really not trying to say that. It's just my opinion that
How you feel about
unless
it. Yeah.
you're so good at 17 that your absence at the first team is probably felt, like
Yeah.
think about Wayne Rooney at Everton or,
Yeah.
like I said, Yamal at Barcelona. Those are 17-year-olds that have a significant influence on the first team. And Cheeto's obviously not at that stage yet, understandably,
Yeah.
right? So in that case, like I said, I just think he should, because let's be honest, he's probably not going to be playing youth football next season.
Yeah.
I would be very, very
Yep.
surprised if he's playing youth football next season. So I just think, as a first year scholar, give him a great send off for his youth career and let him win that FA Youth Cup and become the top scorer. I think that'd be fantastic for him.
For sure. So in that youth cup game against Arsenal, for the United side, who impressed you the most? Who was kind of stand out to you?
Well, it's interesting because going to games is you view things entirely differently.
Mm-hmm.
On I came out of the stadium thinking that Harry Amass had a good game. And I sort
Mm-hmm.
of went online and people were saying that, he didn't have a great game and he was sloppy on the ball. And yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? How you view things a bit differently. I think
Sure.
in terms of United, I think obviously Jack Fletcher was one of the standouts
Yep.
for the majority of the game. I was very impressed with the subs that Adam Lawrence made. Every single
Yeah,
sub
they all had a
had
big
it.
impact, didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah, they did. And Thwaites was excellent when he
Yes.
came on. He was excellent
Yes.
and brought that kind of him and Ibrahimov brought that energy and that bite to that midfield. And um, they're huge outlets off the bench. And when we actually beat Chelsea, um, there's a Chelsea fan that I follow on Twitter, and he kind of said that we've both got similar strong starting 11s, and he'd said, but the difference is you can bring on Jace Fitzgerald and Shea Lacey, and we can bring on under 16s players. The under
Yeah.
18s at the moment is completely stacked.
Yeah, it
But
is.
yeah, in terms of other players, then so Thwaites I thought was impressive when he came on. Jack Fletcher obviously, and then Camerson was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Um, Very, very good performance from him. Probably one of the best that I've seen from him. Um, we we can get into it. I'm not particularly convinced that he's going to be a first team player for Manchester United. I'm not convinced. I think there's areas to his game that need a lot of work, but he's a really great guy. I've spoken to him quite a lot. He's really switched on. He's very athletic. He wants to learn. He wants to get better as a player. The coaches are working with him on areas of his game that he needs to improve on. I think I have seen an improvement in him this year. Particularly going forwards, I think
Yeah.
that was an area for him that he needed to work on. I think some of his final balls were lacking a little bit, but you can see
Yep.
in the final third, he looks a lot more dangerous. One of the things that I do notice about him, though, that I think needs a lot of work is that, particularly in that Arsenal game, you notice it in other games that he plays. He'll get the ball and he tends to kind of just run straight. He hasn't got
Right. Yes.
too much variation in terms of like getting past a man. It's kind of like shuffle,
Mm.
shuffle, knock the ball forward, and if he can't get past, he'll
Use
kind
some
of
pace.
rotate
Yeah.
around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know
It's
against
harder to
first team.
translate that. Yeah. When you're coming up
Yeah,
against better
I
athletes
don't know
and
what.
bigger
Yeah,
players.
I don't. Yeah, you're right. I don't know whether or not something like that could translate too well into senior football. But like I said, I really like him as a player. I think going forward though in our system, comparing it to the first team, I think we need someone a bit more attacking minded going forward. I do think we need someone who's better going forwards. Camerson for me is more of a defender than a
Mm,
wing back. I think
okay.
he can play that wing back role, but in terms of winning output from that position, I think Mantato is much better suited for that position. Um, Camerson for me, I've always rated him as a defender. I think he's very, very good 1v1. He's got excellent recovery pace. Like some of the recovery
Yes.
tackles you see him made against that
Yep.
Arsenal team was brilliant. And he's done that all season. All season he does that, 1v1 defending, running back and making a last ditch tackle. Like bit Wan-Bissaka-esque.
Yep.
Um, so for me, he's more of a right back. I see him more as a right back than a right wing back. But that's just my view on it. I could be entirely wrong, of course, right?
Mm,
But that's just my take. But yeah, Carmison was really impressive, really, really impressive, and he's probably, I would say, the under-18s player of the year for this season.
yeah.
I don't think Cheeto's played enough under-18s football. I think if
Yeah.
Cheeto stuck with under-18s for the whole season, it would obviously be him. But I think Camison's winning that at the moment.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I would agree as well. I think in watching, Fletcher and Kamason were two that I was very, very impressed with, and definitely Thwaites when he came on stood out wildly to me. His calm, his passing range, some of the things he can do from the midfield are really
Mm,
interesting. He's so clean, I guess I would say is kind of how I describe his actions. They're so clean and like
yeah.
tidy and like exact, there's no loose in his game at all. It's all very intentional, very, very tight. And that's interesting to see for a young player to have those traits.
He's
Um
he's kind of he's kind of sort of carrying the torch of these small technical players that we have
yes.
almost every year. We've
I
had
know.
we've had Angel Gomez, we've had Ethan
Yep. Yep,
Galbraith,
like
we've
that. Yep.
had um, obviously Thwaites himself, we've had Dan Gore. So
Mhm.
these sort of small technical midfielders that can get on the ball very, very tidy. Yeah, he's up there with those players, and he's a joy to watch. And again, whether he can become a first team player at United is another thing. But like I said on my Twitter the other day, I don't care if he doesn't make it United. I'm just going to enjoy every minute that I can of watching this kid because he's a real joy to watch. And he's one of those players that I mentioned to you a few videos back for one of the players to watch him and Tyler Fletcher. So not Jack, Tyler
Yep.
Fletcher. Those two have really, really impressed me this season. And it's kind of mad when you think about it that Thwaites isn't a guaranteed starter in the semi final because of the
Right.
strength of the squad, which is
Yep.
unbelievable. Um, One of the funny things I want to mention about the Arsenal game is that as we were walking into the stadium, so I got into London quite late, and it was a bit of a rush to the stadium. Me and my friend had to get the tube, so I didn't really get a chance to check the lineup because obviously there's no signal in the tube.
Yep.
And the moment that I checked the lineup was literally outside the stadium, and I saw the lineup and I saw the bench, and I saw that Mantato was on the bench, and I thought we've got a chance. When I saw him back in the squad, I just thought because he's been injured for quite some time, right? And
Yes.
that was his first game back, and I just thought because Cheetah obviously wasn't starting, and that was a huge blow for the confidence. And then I saw,
Yep.
and obviously Lacey as well wasn't included, so straight away I was just looking at the starting 11, going, "Oh God!" And then I saw the bench and I saw Matata, and I thought, "Nah, we'll be all right."
We'll
And
be
of
okay.
course,
Yeah.
he came on and scored the winner. So
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good lead into Mantato because he's because he's been out for a bit with an injury prior to that, obviously a little bit more under the radar in terms of where he's at. But he came in that game. He played in the under 21s at this last weekend because the 18s didn't have a game, and I think they moved a few of them like him up into the 21s. But it's interesting timing because when United under Ruben Amorim, obviously playing this back three with these wing backs, with these very, where he wants these really attacking wing backs. And we saw when Ruben Amorim came in, the first player he actually put at right wing back is Amad Diallo. Now, I don't mean to make the exact comparison here, but if you were to pick a player who is most similar to Amad Diallo in this youth team, and most similar perhaps to Giovanni Kenda in this youth team, it probably ends up being Mantato. The way that he
100%.
moves, his technical ability, he's an attacking player, like you were saying, and that's what Ruben Amorim wants out of a wing back in the future. Now United have been kind of targeting Kenda, but when they missed on him, when Chelsea swooped in on that, when I asked about it, I was essentially steered in the direction of, hey, we'll probably use some options that we have, and we think we've got some that could be there. And it's not to overhype the players, because we tend to be pretty calm on the youth, but
Yeah.
if you were to make a youth player in the lab who was only 10 months younger than Giovanni Kenda,
Mm.
that was similar to him, it would be Bendito Mantato, pretty much. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, he debuted for the under 18s at 14. I remember watching his debut. He came on as a sub. He was so skinny, and he had this sort of oversized t-shirt on, and he had no number on the back. It was quite an
Yeah.
odd experience. But I remember his debut, and he played left back for the sort of, so that season that he debuted, he didn't play many games because obviously how young he was, right? It was
Yep.
brought in towards the end of the season, came in as a left back. And then the following season, then he started as a left back, and then kind of at the midway point, I think it was, I might be wrong, but it was about the midway point where he started to play right wing. I remember he played right wing for the under 16s on a Hong Kong tour. So under 16s games in the UK are never streamed, right? But
Yeah.
this Hong Kong Jockey Club, it's called. It's a tour that United go on every
Mm.
year. It's the under 16s, and they take a big squad and they play two friendly games. And Mantato played right wing in those games, and that's the first time that I'd ever seen him play right wing. And I was sort of looking at him and thinking, "Oh, I didn't expect that from you." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He played really well in those two games, and he came back then from that tour, and he started playing a lot more for the under 18s, and it was more then as a right winger than a left back.
Right.
And you're absolutely right that the parallels to Quenda are there, and there's a reason why they're there, because they're very accurate.
Yep.
And you're right, he is someone that would be tailor made for that wing back role, because he's got that experience playing at a high level at wing back. He still gets selected for England's youth sides as a left
Yep.
back. Now,
Yep.
I've spoken about that before in my channel, that I think that's more of a personnel problem. I think that
Sure.
England's age group at Mantato's age have got so many good attacking players and
Yeah.
not so many
Makes sense.
left backs. So they sort of think that they're willing to compromise and put Bendito
Right.
there because they know he can do a very good job. But yeah, he's had that, everyone ever mentions it, that Saka transition, the left back to the right wing.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're very right. You're very right in saying that he is someone that 100% is made for that right wing back role. And I haven't mentioned him before because he's been injured.
Yep.
And it's difficult talking about a player that you've not seen play for a while in terms of and how they're developing, because
Yeah.
you don't, and he's only just turned 17. He turned 17 in January. So
Yep.
to start talking about first team, months ago was sort of a bit of a pipe dream. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, very impressed with him this season, and he's obviously scored that goal against Arsenal. He scored that goal against West Brom for the 21s. And did you catch the quotes after the game, after the West Brom game, that the 21s manager Travis Binion said?
I caught some of them. I'm trying to remember the specifics of it, but I do remember
Yeah, he
reading a
basically
few.
just he didn't give too much away, but he essentially
Yeah.
said that he's very hardworking,
Yes.
and
There's something about the club rate
the
him
club thinking a
really
lot of
think
him.
really highly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the club think a lot of him,
Yeah.
and there's no surprise. And yeah, he is definitely is someone that for me, I'd love to see get into the first team. It might not be by the end of the season or anything like that, but he is someone that I think definitely people should look out for. I did a piece on my channel, and people can go back and watch it. I can't remember what
Yeah.
episode it is, but I did an analysis on the way he receives the ball out in wide positions, and I likened it a lot to an analysis that Ian Wright did on Bukayo Saka like years ago now.
Okay.
And it's when a left-footed player on the right wing receives the ball, where the ball comes towards them and they're positioned in a way where they can immediately step inside. So rather than facing the player that's passing them the ball and they're back to goal,
Mm,
if you're in that scenario, you kind of push yourself into a bit of a corner because the defender could just get tight to you and you basically
yeah.
have an option of passing it back or
Mm,
potentially losing the ball. He does a very good job of receiving the ball at sort of a side angle where immediately he can spring into midfield. And he's an excellent ball carrier. He's very, very good at ball carrying. So
yeah.
he does that a lot where he receives the ball at an angle, could explode straight away into midfield and carry it and penetrate that way. Or he can go on the other way because he's got a very low center of gravity and he can get away from his defender very quickly. But
Yeah.
it's so difficult to predict how his game's going to translate into first team football because he does have the fundamentals of pace, strength, low center of gravity, good in 1v1s. The biggest compliment that I can give Mantato is that he reminds me of a player that Chelsea would have had in the dominant youth teams that they've had over the years,
Yeah.
the ones that won the UEFA Youth League and stuff. He's someone that you could pick from our team and think, yeah, he would be someone that they would want, that City would want over those years. But it's so difficult because if you he City had a player called Carlos Borges. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
About
I
2 or
do
3 years
remember his
ago,
name. Yeah.
and this guy was scoring 20 goals a season, and every time he played United, he just absolutely demolished us. And he was very athletic, very quick, good in 1v1s, had a good left foot, and you look at those sort of fundamentals and you think, yeah, this guy's got what it takes to become a first teamer. City sold him to Ajax. He didn't do too well at Ajax from what I can tell. And I think he's playing for Wolves at the
Mm,
moment. But from what I've seen, the little research that I've done is that he's not played much for them. I don't know whether he's injured, but he's hardly
yeah.
played. So again,
It's not always
predicting
such
whether
an easy straight line predictive,
no,
outcome, really.
yeah, like Mantato scored 8 goals this season, so it's a decent number considering the amount of time that he's been out injured. But like I said, this Borges guy was scoring 20,
Yep.
25 goals, and had similar kind of attributes. So it's very, very difficult to predict. But he is someone that if he made his debut by the midpoint next season, I would not be surprised because, like I said, the club, like you said, you know this already. The club rate him very highly, and
Yeah.
he's got what it takes to replace someone like Quenda. Because you're absolutely right, he's got very similar attributes to him.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that I think is kind of nice about it's a little bit of a dichotomy on this, but this Amarim system with these wingbacks is that the wingbacks are really important to a system,
Mm,
but at the same time, they almost can get away with a little bit more because you have three other forwards in the team versus like being one of the three in a winger, right? In an Amarim team, the way that the back five is, there's not so much pressure on the wingbacks to score goals as there might be if you were just a winger in a regular, system, coming in being playing in place of Ahmad or Rashford or Garnacho, there's a lot of pressure in those positions in the front three to immediately produce and get output for a young player if they're coming into it. And I
mm,
even look at it almost like Patrick Dorgu. Now, obviously, he's a bit older. Not, but a bit older,
yeah,
a
yeah,
couple seasons under his belt. But when you watch, like, for example, the Sociedad game, he wasn't so good in some ways, right? Even though at the same time he really was, because it was like he was allowed to be effective just with the attributes that he has,
yeah.
his athleticism, his pace, his positioning, his understanding of the system, just doing the fundamentals. Even though his passes were a bit shaky, his carrying was a bit shaky, he was able to just use a lot of those core kind of traits and help the team. And I feel like that's one of the advantages of this system for the wingbacks is even though they're so important, if you can kind of just do the job, and the same for Harry Amass when he came in that level, he looked fine off the bat, like nothing crazy, nothing special, but he looked fine. He looked like he's got a place in there just because he
Yeah.
would just do the basics, and you don't have to like instantly be getting shots on goal, getting goals, getting in the box, doing too much. from those positions. And I think it's really well suited for young players, which is also why Amarim has used them over the course of his time as a coach, young players in those wide positions, because it's like it almost takes the pressure off them a little bit. They're not a pure defender in a back four where they're constantly being run at, but they're also not a pure attacker. It's almost like, even though it's so important, I've found it to be maybe a less pressure position in some respects, and
Yeah,
hopefully, that can suit a player like Mantato to just get in and use his traits. But if he doesn't have instant like crazy output, it's not going to be like the end of the world like it might be if you come in at striker and you're not scoring goals. People are already on your back about it.
yeah, I totally get what you're saying. So I think essentially what you're saying is, just to confirm for me, is that you're saying that the system essentially at wing back, if you have the right attributes and you have the right profile, you don't necessarily have to have a great game to
Yeah, to be
to have an
effective,
input
to
in the
help.
team.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
totally agree. Yeah, you're 100%, and you're
yeah,
right on Dorgu there. And um, just drawing it back to Mantato, it's interesting if you look at the goals. So he's only scored 8, right? But
yep,
I did put on my Twitter a compilation of those 8 goals. A lot of the majority of the goals come from him being at the back post and making late runs
yeah,
and being in the right place at the right time. And I think we've seen that a bit more recently in recent weeks, that we're seeing the fullbacks be in those almost end
yes,
positions
yes.
and just not,
Mazraoui and Dallo getting
yeah,
on those. Yeah,
just not quite having that quality. So yeah, again, the right wing back position is perfectly suited for him for that reason. He's got the experience of playing in defence. He's quick. He's good on the ball. He can drive into midfield, like I said, and carry it. He's the areas I think I'd like him to work on. If people here don't watch him regularly, I would, because he's not the perfect player, right? I think that's
sure, of course.
obvious.
Yeah,
So I think it's important to raise some weaknesses so that we can look at things and how he's improving. So I think he needs to work a little bit on slowing his game down and bringing other players into
sure.
the game. So what you can guarantee with Mantato, if he is playing, and it's a good thing, is that you can say the fullback's going to have a tough day today. He's going to go
Yeah,
1v1 almost every opportunity he can, and he's going to try and get their heads down, and that's a good thing.
yep,
But I would like him to see him do a bit more of that, like that Sancho play. I know that
yep.
sounds like I'm saying it like a derogative way, because
I know what you
we've
mean,
all got
though.
our
Yeah,
views on
yeah,
Sancho, but I would like him just to see him, maybe not play the game so fast and try and bring
yep,
other players into the and link with them. I'd like to see him work on the sort of when he cuts inside that finish into the far post. How many goals do we see Saka score that? That kind of
yes,
consistent cut inside, far post shot, the
yep,
finesse into the bottom corner. I'd like to see him work on that a little bit. And just the general creativity. I think that's something that when I've watched Quenda, he definitely has over Matata, is like those through balls, like the look up and just play a
yes,
nice through ball. He
yep.
just hasn't quite got that to his game yet. So those are 3 things I'd like him to work on. But um, definitely, it's almost quite like poetic and fitting that potentially
Hmm.
Amarim brings him through after bringing through Quenda, that's someone that's so similar. It's
Yeah,
it's kind of weird, isn't it?
it
Um,
is. Yeah,
Very exciting player though, very exciting player. And again, not trying to, like you said, not trying to overhype him.
yep,
I don't think he's of a level of talent like Greenwood or maybe Mainu, but he's definitely close to being a player that could make a real difference to the team and could save us a lot of money, a lot of
yeah.
money.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and there's a lot of things the team needs, obviously, so that would help. That would help a
yeah,
lot.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so obviously he moved up to the under 21s, at least for a game. Maybe we'll see more of that. I think both
Hopefully,
him
yeah.
and Jack Fletcher were kind of the standouts in that game at the last weekend.
Yeah.
Would you say that's right?
Um, I'd say so. I think Tyler Fletcher as well. Um, he's someone that's going under the radar, James, and again,
Because
I'm
not
really
like the
not.
goals, right? It's like from a
Yeah,
deeper
he's
position. Yeah.
quite a rare profile that we have in the academy that we don't tend to produce many of. He is in that mold of, um, I don't want to say Carrick Busquets kind of vibe, but he is
Mm,
similar where like he can play that sixth position. He's very good at spatial awareness. He's got a good idea of what's around him.
Mm-hmm.
He does
Yep.
there's a lot of those, when the ball, when someone, Busquets used to do it all the time, where the ball comes to him and someone's pressing him, and he just does a, it looks so simple, just a
Little
little drop
feint
of the
and then just out
shoulder.
of the pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very good at that. He's good at line breaking passes. He can get forward. He can contribute in the final third. He can get goals. He's a lot, for me. His game will translate better to first team football than his
Mm,
brother Jack. Um,
interesting.
I really really like Tyler, and I think he, like again, I'm not trying to say that he's going to make it into the first team here, but I think he'll make it a good, very good level. Because he's got, I'm watching him over the past few months, and he's improved a lot, and he's showing me
Interesting.
a lot of qualities that I like. Like, he's quite tall, right, like his brother.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He's got a good engine. He can get about the pitch very well, and like I said, on the ball, fantastic, good passing range. Um, Very press resistant in the sense that he can use his body well to shield the ball, to shimmy and move out the press. Um, Keep an eye on him. I really really do like him, and he's someone that he got 2 assists to his brother in that game, which is unbelievable. If you
Nice.
saw
That's
that,
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yep.
was
Yep.
crazy. I mean, I just, God, I'd love to have a chat with them. I probably could message them, but just to ask them what that feels like, just to
Yeah.
assist each other and play on the same pitch together. That'd be
Yeah.
crazy.
It's probably a cool
Special. It's
experience. Yeah.
special.
Yep. Good. Well, that's good to see, and I think that I'm not suggesting this is what United will do, but I know there's a little bit of an impetus now with the way that the league is going, with Europa being like the focus for the first team, to say, we've seen some youth get into the team. We know some more players will come back healthy, but as we get towards the end of the season, there's players that are not going to be here next year. And as the league gets a little, there's still something potentially to play for in the league positionally. It's a wild season from the first team level, to where even just some consistency for 5 games, suddenly you could be back in a European place, even if it's the Conference
Yeah.
League.
Yeah.
But as they get towards the end and there's players departing, Ericsson, guys like that leaving for free this summer that will be departing, and potentially others, I think there is a push a little bit within the club to say we need to see a few people, see what they're going to do, what they can do. Casemiro could leave, Ericsson could leave. There's others in there, to see what they can do in the first team, because they kind of got to know, to plan for summer. Like we've discussed with Mantato and things like that. Are we going to buy someone there? Do we have
Yeah.
ready-made options? That's a part of putting it all together. If there were, put you on the spot on this, because we've seen Cheeto, obviously we know. We've seen Amass get a debut now. Maybe he'll get some more minutes potentially. We will see on that left side. It would be nice to see that, if it was Dorgu and then him. It would be nice to see that, to maintain that left-footed consistency over there. But if there was 3 more players that you could say, maybe they're not ready, but if we could see them just in the first team environment a bit to see what they could do, who would be the
Yeah.
3 you'd think we need to see them kind of step up a little bit, but also, in thinking with the future, who would they be for you?
If
Where you
if you
think they might have a future here?
if you're going by just training and squad inclusions based on what we've seen in recent weeks, you'd probably have to go. It's a boring selection, but you probably have to go with Jack Fletcher, Kokonki, Sekou Kone, and Morehouse, because those are the
Yep.
players that have been around this first team squad regularly and not obviously gotten the opportunity, but those are the ones that um, seem to be sort of being pushed ahead of others.
Yep.
Now, we've spoken about Mantato quite a bit. Would it surprise me if at the end of the season, at the last game, he came on as a sub? No, it probably wouldn't.
Yep.
It really, really wouldn't. Um, in terms of players like like Thwaites and Ibrahimov and Tyler Fletcher, I think they're going to be kept with the under-18 setup for this season. I'd be surprised if we saw someone of that kind of ilk being played.
Right.
Um, and if you look at those players that I've mentioned, that those 4, they do stand out physically in terms of their height and things like that. Like
Yep.
Jack Fletcher, Morehouse is a very good ball carrier, very athletic. Sekou Kone, obviously we've spoken about him before.
Yep.
Kokonki, you know, 6'3", 6'4", very athletic, very physical. So those are the ones probably that they're quite boring picks, but those are the ones I'd say that are most likely to play, I suppose, until the end of the season. I'd I'd love to see Mantato get in there though. I'd love to. Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna die on this hill. I'm going to die on this hill, right? And it's not going to happen. But I did say at the start of the season that I thought Shea Lacey would make his debut by the end of the season, and I was pretty
If he
convinced
comes
by
back.
that.
If he comes back.
Yeah, I was pretty convinced by that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen now. He just hasn't played enough, and I think it's been so
Yeah.
unfortunate
True.
because that guy was developing so well, so well, and he was playing unbelievable football, and I just had a lot of high hopes for him. And look, he still could make a difference, but and he is someone that I was fully convinced by the end of the season would have made his debut, um, because he's that player that United always tend to have in their team, that sort of player that
Yep.
gets you off your seat, that will do things that not any other player can do. And you know, you pay to watch someone like Shea Lacey. You know,
Yep.
with the academy, sometimes they put out a team and 10 of the players you sort of think, don't really fancy watching today, and then Lacey's a start and you think,
He's one
right,
of those. Yeah.
I'm gonna watch today. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, if you were to ask me who would I want to get a debut by the
Yeah.
end of the season, it'd be Shea Lacey. If I could
Right.
pick, but I just don't think it's going to happen. But yeah, to answer your question, I think we have to go kind of reserved and kind of go by what the coaches clearly think are the players that are closest. You know, like I said, Morehouse, um, Sekou Kode, Jack Fletcher, and Kakonki. Those are probably the ones I'd guess. It was so nice to seeing Amass get his debut, though, wasn't it? It was
It
great.
was very nice. Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
that was
and
good to see. Hopefully that means there's something in it.
yeah, and he got 20 minutes, which
Yeah.
you
Not
know
bad.
because I couldn't watch the second half. I was at a concert, so I didn't actually know until after the game finished that he came on. Um, but I saw him get 20 minutes, and I thought, oh, okay, because it was obviously his 18th birthday, the day that he came on,
Yep.
and I thought maybe if he came on with like 5 minutes to go at 2-0, when players get
Yeah, I
like
know what you're saying. Like it's just a
those like
chance
sympathy
to like, yeah,
appearances.
exactly. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like it's
they
for
get like
show, but it's not really like game time. This was game time. This was real game
yeah,
time.
it was 2-0
Yeah.
away from home with 20 minutes to go. Anything could have
Yeah.
happened at that point. So Amorim clearly, well, we have to
See
assume that he
something
does
in him.
trust
Yeah.
him to some degree.
Yep.
And he did mention as well, didn't he, that he wanted to play him against Fulham, but he'd played the full game against Arsenal, so
Correct.
he couldn't.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
it's interesting what's going to happen there. I'm not entirely sure. What do you think we're doing? Do you think we're trying to play him to raise the
Yeah, I think
market
we'll try
value,
to
or what
play
do you
him
think?
in a little bit because I think in an ideal world, you don't know with Diego Leon coming in summer what he's going to turn
Yeah.
into yet because he's also very young, very raw. I think he's going to stop. I think that in an ideal, Amarim doesn't have to keep compromising on that left-footed left back that he has in Dorgu and wants to make sure he's got at least a backup, at least one backup who can do the same things Dorgu can do, so that you're not constantly changing the system, changing the team, changing the angles, and getting some consistency that we've not been able to have. So I think there's a purpose to that for sure.
That Leicester game was such a feel good game, wasn't it? I think
Yeah,
if you discount what happened to Heaven, that was one of my favorite games of the season.
for
After
sure.
watching it back as well,
Absolutely.
I saw the first half, couldn't watch the second half, obviously, but watched it back and you know seeing Collier out there, seeing Cheeto celebrate with
Yep,
Bruno, seeing Amass get his debut. This is I just love that, and I'd love to see more of that come the end of the
for
season.
sure. Well, hopefully
Uh,
we do. Yeah,
yeah, hopefully, yeah. Cross fingers, because it does a lot of good for our recruitment, and I did say that
correct.
about Heaven. Kevin can't be classed as an academy player. He's played one game for the 21s. We can't class him as an academy player, but the start that he's had will have such a good impact on our national recruitment
Absolutely.
because players and you know we're not as good as we used to be, but we have to take advantage of that.
Yep,
We have to use that as a selling point to say, look, you're Heaven, you're at Arsenal, you got Gabriel and Saliba ahead of you. What's the chances of you getting your Premier League debut, your European
exactly.
debut? Very unlikely. So come join us, and we need to be doing that with some of the best because we can take some of the best talents in the
We
country.
could. They're
We
out
we
there.
can do it. You know, especially now with the situation we're in,
Yep.
we can fast track players, and a lot of young players just there's not much what's the word there's not a lot of loyalty in the game anymore,
Correct.
and
Yeah.
players just want to make it. Players just want
Yeah.
to say that they've become professional footballers and have a good career. That's what it's like these days. So, and of course, United's an amazing place to do that, regardless of how bad we might be. So we need
Exactly.
to use the situation with Heaven and how well he's playing, and use that in our recruitment strategy. I think that could get some of the best players in the country.
For sure, I think so, and hopefully we will see more of that. I suspect we will coming into summer. See at least a couple more things like that come through, where United are at least trying, and who knows what could happen, right? Um,
Yeah, I mean, this is a point of the season where you start to hear little murmurs
mm,
about who we might be trying to get and stuff like
yep,
that. But yeah, it's interesting because, just going back quickly on Amass, the source that I speak to, um, he actually explained to me that when we signed Amass, that he was never projected to be a first team potential signing. It wasn't
yeah,
necessarily a case of, we've signed this guy because we think that definitely he can be a first teamer, because there academy players that we do that with, of course, Cheetah being one of them, right?
yep,
The academy doesn't always make signings with the aim of them being first team players. Sometimes we make filler
yeah,
signings, we call them, right, where we don't have a position filled in that in the squad. So we go out and we try and buy someone that can do a job for a season or two, and we can give them, a great footballing experience by being in the program, and they can then go and have a good career, right? And
yep,
you can, I don't know how accurate that information is, because Amass was England's left back at the time, England's under
yep,
17s left back. So, and he had been on the bench for Watford, so he obviously was highly regarded, but he wasn't necessarily someone that people considered to be someone that would definitely make the first team. So yeah, the recruitment stuff is something that's really, really interesting. And sometimes when we sign players, it's not always with the aim of them being first teamers. But yeah, hopefully we can pick a few big talents this summer. We'll see.
for sure. Good. Well, that's a good place to end it there, and then when we get back from the national break, we'll catch up after a few games, after the cup game, and see what happens from that. So it was good to have you on again,
Thanks so
and
much, James.
yeah, appreciate it very much, and thank you all for watching. Make sure to follow my friend here, and we will keep this up the rest of the season. See what else comes. I'm sure there is more to come.
Great. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.